Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with Dr. India White. I'm your host. I'm super thrilled to be here with you today. Before we get started, I do want to make some announcements with you. First things first, the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. It will be featured on the X Factor EDU network, hosted by Dr. Matthew Joseph. You can also find it on Spotify. In addition to that, it will be on my social media outlets. You can follow me on Facebook at Miss India White. LinkedIn is the India White. Twitter is Indy Stupid Peach. Instagram is Indy238. Uh, YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. I want to encourage you to please check out my website at www.india-white.com for books, blogs, or to schedule me for your event. I also wanted to just let you know of some upcoming events. I'm super grateful. I had a wonderful time uh, working with Imagine Schools in Orlando, Florida, doing a wonderful session on grit with, I think they had about 100 plus principals in attendance. We just talked about grit. So thank you so much to everyone in Imagine Schools for that opportunity. I also wanted to update you guys. I was supposed to see you all at NCTM, the regional conference, but my flight was not able to make it because of the traveling, the weather in Chicago. So best wishes for those that are in the Chicago area. I know there's like a winter storm. And then in Missouri, the connector flight was acting wonky because of everything. So I won't be at NCTM with you guys at the regional conference, but I definitely hope to be in attendance at the next conferences for NCTM. Thank you to everyone at NCTM, all of the leadership for that opportunity. But like I said, I'll be seeing you guys soon. I also wanted to let you guys know I do have a keynote coming up tomorrow as well for the FAM2 conference, the GLA conference. It'll be a virtual platform. I'm super excited. Thank you to everybody for that opportunity. And so now that I've given you guys that announcement, I do also want to just let you know I do have grit sheets available for you where you're able to get different resources. You're trying to build grit with your leaders, whether in education or corporate or whatnot, you can get the grit workbook and so many other resources to help you as you're building grit. We recently launched a grit calendar, so make sure you check that out. You can go to the website, www.india-white to check that out. If you have a little one or whatnot that needs tutoring services, please make sure that you are contacting me at the Grit Academy so we can get you guys established. This podcast again is if you are trying to close the achievement gap, but you're having classroom management issues or your students just aren't motivated to do the work, then you could join me and sometimes guests on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. So speaking of achievement gap, I know recently we just had the NAEP data that was released for the nation. And as a result of the NAEP data, people are now trying to find out how we can all move forward. So this topic today in the Grit and Equity Talks podcast, we'll be talking about how we can move the needle forward. So we'll be moving the needle with grit. And of course, I told you guys, grit is having great resilience in time. I want to talk with you a little bit about how you can do it just in general, my ideas that I would like to share with all principal leaders, teachers, anyone in the community that is connected to helping students to bridge the gap. So first things first, tips for moving forward. I would highly recommend taking that NAEP data and doing data chats. Data chats with teachers, data chats with family, with school district leaders, school building principals, and at their level explaining that NAEP data, which we'll talk about it a little bit today on the show. I would also recommend doing a data wall where you're able to really kind of disaggregate that data and follow through with what's going on with that data. I love helping principal leaders with establishing that and arranging data walls. So I think it's a wonderful tool, and you can reach me later if you want my assistance on that. I would highly recommend doing PBIS incentives, also data center PLCs. I would highly recommend getting together a plan for community and family nights. I can help you arrange all that if you need it later. I would do one-on-one meetings with students, teachers, family members, and then of course learning with where you're able to visit from classroom to classroom to see what's going on, what's working, what's not. So personally, I think that those are some great strategies for you if you're really trying to bridge the gap and you're needing some support. So thanks for letting me share that. And I think that one thing about data is it can be so overwhelming. And I was talking to principals about this yesterday. It could be very daunting, it could cause anxiety, feel like, oh God, this is just one more thing to do. But I think that if you understand how to really chunk down that data and break it down and to use the relevant parts of the data that speaks to you, that's what's going to really help. So for instance, I'm going to pull up the NAEP data for you, and we are going to walk through that, and then we're going to look and see what NAEP has to say, what the Department of Education had to say for how we can move forward with this. So here we have, this is the 2024 NAEP math assessment. I am only for this particular podcast going to really hone in on the math. So they have the math scores, and they're telling you online availability. It was released January 2025. Um, and so this is from the National Center of for Education Statistics, which is wonderful, live data. So as we explore the results and how people did, which if I was in CTM, I would have talked with you guys about this a little bit. Um, I'm going to go down to some slides because these are full, but I'm going to go into the nitty gritty. So here it shows us that um, proficiency levels of students. You can see the year. So we were at 41% proficiency. That's pre-pandemic. And then 2022, we dropped down to 36%. So we definitely had a COVID dip there. And then now we're starting to have gains again for your fourth grade math. So that shows that we're on the right track moving forward. Um, and this is the trend for how our fourth graders did. So Common Talk, basically they're saying we have 39% of fourth graders across the United States that are proficient in mathematics. Again, 39% of all of your fourth grade students that took this NAEP test are proficient in math, that they're at their levels. Okay. I also want to eventually look at eighth grade. Let me scroll down to um, fourth grade a little bit more. These are students and how they scored proficiency wise and any increases or decreases. So you'll see it says Black or whatever, African American, whatnot. They had an increase of 3 points for 75th percentile. There's an increase of 4 points. That's good. Hispanic learners, 3 points increase, 75th percentile, 5 points. White learners, Caucasian learners, 1 point, and the 75th percentile, 2 points. Males, 2 points increase, 75th percentile, 2 points. Females, 2 points average scores, and then 3 points, 75th percentile. Okay. And then they even talk about the regions, who's in the Northeast and who's in the South. South didn't do as good as Northeast. Absenteeism, they talked about that as well. They said that 30% of fourth graders were either missing 3 or more days of school in the month before taking that assessment. So that definitely could have been a factor as to why they didn't score higher. And then it says that was actually decreased from the 35% in 2022, interesting, and an increase to 24% from the data that we took in 2019. Anyways, I don't want to bore you guys with this. So this is pretty interesting. How many kids were assessed? Now, they assessed 117,900 fourth graders. They assessed 115,200 eighth graders. We'll see this to them in a minute. Number of schools assessed across the nation. They assessed 6,100 students with tests of 60 minutes. They took it on Chromebooks or Chrome tablets. All right. So now that you have that, now I want us to trickle back and talk about eighth grade. Okay. But before we do, let's just wrap up fourth grade. So it says the average score at fourth grade was 2 points higher compared to 2022 and 3 points lower than the pre-pandemic score of 2019. So basically what we're saying is we're not quite back to where we were before the pandemic, but we have been making gains. So with that said, now let's go and jump into eighth grade and see what's going on there. So eighth grade learners, eighth grade, and the NAEP data is loading for us. So even though it's voting, I can't read. It's a little bit like spewed out. But here we go. Okay. So it says that in 2019, our eighth graders were scoring at 34% proficiency levels. So then they dropped to 26%, and then they rose back up to 28%. So basically, again, they're not where they were before the pandemic. 2019, it was 34%. We're only at 28%. But I want you to think of the bigger picture. If you're telling me only 28% of students in eighth grade are proficient in math, what is going on? That's barely over a quarter of eighth grade students being proficient. That's a concern. And the reason why this is so concerning to me is because we spend so much money on, like, we spend so much money on resources, federal programs, curriculum, and yet we only have 28% of eighth graders that know how to do math at their level. And, you know, with both grade levels, we don't even have half the students across the nation that are proficient in fourth grade and eighth grade. You have an issue. If you want me to come to your school and talk more about that and how we can move forward with moving the needle forward, I'd be honored to. I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of that because that's where our heart is right now. And I know parents are even concerned. We've been spending money on tutoring projects. We've been hiring people to come in. We've had instructional coaches and staff. We've done so many different federal programs. It was ridiculous how many millions of dollars we spent, but yet we're still not getting those results. Yes, I'm thankful that the needle is beginning to move forward, but still, guys, 28% of eighth graders know how to do math at their level. So it's definitely an area of focus. So now I want to go back to what they were saying to us. So let's keep going. Now, for the eighth grade scores, we had student groups 2024 score compared to 2022. I think it's very interesting. Hispanic families is the only one that I see demographic wise. I wonder why I don't see the other demographics. Here it says Hispanic learners went down 3 points. And then the 25th percentile went down 5 points. Now that's the lower quartile of students, right? That's not good. Parents, and then they have all these factors: parents that didn't finish high school, students that were economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, students who were identified as English language learners. There's a lot there. But it's very interesting that I do not see, I'm looking, I do not see data for eighth grade that tells us more than just Hispanic learners. Where is the rest of that data? Anyway, and so here you have 29% of students in eighth grade that reported missing 3 or more days of school before that test, compared to 2022, where it was 32% or 22% in 2019. So students have a lot going on there. But just to conclude what's going on with eighth grade, so in 2024, the average score at eighth grade was not significantly different from 2022, but it was 8 points lower than 2019. So we're just kind of maintaining. Does that make sense? And then it says here, the scores, even though they did not significantly change, it says that they did increase for your higher performing students at the 75th and 90th percentiles, while scores did decrease for your lower performing students at the 10th and 25th percentile. So I think it's very interesting. And I still have that question. Where is the rest of the data? I don't see the demographic data for other, they only have Hispanic learners for us. So I guess maybe they're just still tallying it up, because I just don't see it. So there's the most data for you. So it's basically, you had eighth graders performing at 28%. So 28% of all eighth graders in the United States are on grade level, compared to fourth graders. You have 39% of fourth graders showing that they're proficient. So we have some work to do. And when I was at the training, we were asking questions like, how do we get to that place? Like, why does the data look this way? And of course, we know there's so many different factors. There's economic factors. There's historical factors, so many different things. But all we can continue to do is to move the needle forward, right? So now, with that said, I do want to go to the NAEP, to the actual um, NADB.gov, the part of the people that came up with the NAEP results and were into education. And excuse me, I want to hear what they have to say about how we can move the needle forward. This says 10 takeaways from the newly released 2024 NAEP results. So let's look and see what they have to say. This is the National Assessment Governing Board that's talking to us. I guess it was right with the Department of Education. So it says some important national takeaways. It says U.S. students have not recovered from the devastating impacts on the pandemic, right? It says the national scores are below pre-pandemic levels in all tested grades and subjects. Drive most of the progress in 2024. Gaps, unfortunately, are growing between higher performing and lower performing students, a trend that we've seen for more than a decade. And then they have a link here. We can look at that. You guys can check that out later. They talk about reading. Reading is both down nationally for fourth and eighth grade learners. Only a third, 33% of eighth graders aren't even reading at level. Oh my goodness. Wow. So then it says, let's keep going. Let's look at the math. This is a lot. Fourth grade, the scores, right? I showed you guys that that's nationally by 2 points. In eighth grade, the scores are flat nationally. So unfortunately, that overall flatness, it masks the higher performing students in 2024. Okay. So then they're talking now about, okay, which states did have an increase in 14 tutor districts. I guess it's like a specific type of district. But here, look, states that did have increase in fourth grade math scores are 50 make the United States. Which states were there? You had Alabama, Delaware, District of Columbia, Hawaii, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, which I know they are so happy about that because they always do stellar work. Mississippi, Nevada, New York, Puerto Rico, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Those all had increases. Now let's look at the specific to the districts. Shout out to all these that I'm saying, by the way. Atlanta, wonderful, public schools. Baltimore City Public Schools. Boston Public Schools, right. Charlotte, Mecklenburg schools. Clark County, but that was the one in Nevada, not in Georgia. Clark County. DC Public Schools. Detroit Public Schools. Um, Guilford Schools or County Schools in North Carolina. Houston Independent School District in Texas. Los Angeles, yes. LAUSD. Miami. All right, Miami-Dade. Go Florida. Put us on the map. New York City Public Schools, School District of Philadelphia, excuse me, and San Diego San Diego Unified School District in California. Very nice. But look here, it says in the fourth grade reading of all the tutor schools and states, shout out to Atlanta. Look, it says only Atlanta public schools saw significant gains compared to 2022. Fabulous. And then it says important pattern among subgroups. In eighth grade, across both subjects, Hispanic students saw significant declines compared to 2022. In reading, Hispanic learners are down by 5 points, and in math, they're down by 3 points. In math, fourth grade math, Black and Hispanic students and white students all saw average score gains, but this was driven by higher performing students. Lower performers' scores were flat. Bonus takeaway, surpassing pre-pandemic scores. Wow. Only one state, Louisiana, surpassed 2019 fourth grade reading score. And only one state, Alabama, surpassed the fourth grade math score. So shout out to them. Excellent. But that's 1 out of 50 states. So we've got some work to be done, guys. And like I said, I could definitely do a deeper dive into this work with you. If you're wanting me to, I would be honored to, come on your campuses and we can just talk about this kind of stuff to you. This is, they're talking about declining overall performance. And we're just going to break down a little bit more the NAEP.
Welcome. My name is Brian Kramer.
And I'm Ebony Walton.
In this poster session, we will present data for the nation, states, and select districts on how students performed on NAEP, math and reading grades 4 and 8 over the last 30 years, emphasizing the score declines we've seen for lower performing students since 2013.
Before we look at some of the data, I would like to introduce the Nation's Report Card, or NAEP, to those of you who may not know about the program. NAEP has been in operation for over 50 years. It is federally mandated to assess students' knowledge and skills in multiple subjects, and we measure students' knowledge across the country at elementary, middle, and high school levels. In recent years, we have been mandated to assess 4th and 8th graders in mathematics and reading every 2 years, and we also assess 12th graders in mathematics and reading every 4. With additional funding and with other objectives as set by the National Assessment Governing Board, we do measure students' knowledge and skills in other subject areas.
And NAEP is also a holistic measure that assesses students' knowledge and skills in more than just math and reading. It also assesses students in such things as science, civics, and US history, among other subjects.
So this is just letting us know where NAEP comes from and how all this makes sense. I want to jump a little bit, and see what they have to say about those scores.
Since that time, scores dipped a bit and then increased 1 point from 2017 to 2019, though the 2019 score is still lower than the 2013 score. Now, let's look at math grade 8. Similar to grade 4, the 2019 Math 8 score was higher than the scores in the 1990s and early 2000s. However, the 2019 score was lower than the scores in 2011 and 2013, where we see that peak. Since that time, scores have been lower.
Moving to reading, here is our trend line of average scores that date back to 1992. As in the previous charts, anytime you see an
I said I don't want to talk about reading on this particular podcast. I just wanted to kind of go into this a little bit with you guys to see where we stand nationwide. So 39% of your students in 4th grade are awesome in math, and 28% awesome in math for 8th grade. We've got work to be done, and I hope that all of you guys can continue to do your part to move the needle. I also want to throw in here a last minute message to parents. We all need to get on board. All of you, however you have, inherited children, please take an opportunity to find out where your child is regarding their district scores and if they're being proficient at the local level on, teacher made tests, district tests, state tests, so that you can do your part of helping that students to be motivated and to have the grit that they need to be successful in the math class. So, and some of you might be saying, well, how do you do that as a parent, right? Like, so you show us the NAEP data, but now as a parent, I would recommend you contact your student's math teacher or the district math person and find out what's going on with the school, how you guys stand. I would talk with the math teacher. I would have a parent teacher conference with the students and teachers. And I would ask them, how is your child doing? And where are the areas of focus? How can you help? Do you need to help them with staying organized? Do you need to help them review? Do you need to hire a tutor? What do you need to do so that your child can show that they are proficient on the level that they are at, at that particular class? So with that said, guys, I know there's a lot of content coming down with the new data, but I think we have to just continue to keep it real and know what's going on in our nation at this time and how we can get on board to help make a positive difference. So thank you so much for joining me today on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. Again, the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. It's going to be featured on the X Factor Evening Network, hosted by Dr. Matthew Joseph, and it can be found on Spotify. I also want to encourage you to please follow me when you get a chance. Facebook is Miss India White, LinkedIn is the India White, Twitter is English You Can Teach, Instagram is India238, YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. Check out our website for books, blogs, or to schedule me for your next speaking or coaching event. That is www.india-white.com. Also, if you're needing some tutoring support, which the scores just came out, I would be honored to support you and to assist with the Grit Academy. It's an online tutoring and learning opportunity for you. Please check out the Grit calendars that were just launched and be excited to put those in your hands so you could be well equipped to prepare your gritty year. Also, again, this podcast, if you're trying to close the achievement gap with having classroom management issues, or your students just aren't motivated to do the work, then join me on this podcast. And if you're wanting to be a guest, send me an email at india.white.123@gmail.com. So thanks again so much, guys, for joining me on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. And until next time, stay gritty. See ya.